morning. Good to be here today. Good to see you all. Also, I'd like to give my welcome as well for those who are online, and also got somebody online, maybe not regularly, but Margaret. You might remember Margaret, who came here a few times when she was living nearby. She's watching today, so greetings to you as well, Margaret, as well as all those others who are watching as well. Now, it's going to be a battle for you to stay awake after having a big breakfast this morning. I might battle to stay awake in the pulpit after a big breakfast this morning as well. But yeah, thank you to the ladies who prepared it, and also cleaning up, and some of the blokes who cleaned up as well. Thank you for serving us. We had a great breakfast, as well as the nature quiz and the lesson as well. So if you didn't come this morning for breakfast, you missed something really good. So next time, come along. Okay, we're continuing our series about the transforming grace and truth of Jesus. And we were looking at it from Max Lucado, and when I saw his Bible Verse of the Day video about grace and truth in the life of Jesus. And Alan, clicker. Where's the frozen? Okay. The atmosphere of grace, in the matchless gift of his Son, God has encircled the whole world with the atmosphere of grace. There's a lot of doubling up there. What happened? As real as the air which circulates around the globe. All who choose to breathe this life-giving atmosphere will live and grow up in the stature of men and women of Christ Jesus. I don't know how that happened. It doubled up some words. There's some gremlins there in the PowerPoint. What's that? Okay, well anyway, you get double the quote. We're looking at some of the stories of parables in the ministry of the life of Jesus to see how he combined grace and truth. We looked at the parable of the vineyard owner. He was in a hurry to get his crop in, and so he went out at different times to get harvesters. He went out at 6 a.m., went out at 9 a.m., 12 noon, 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. for workers for his vineyard. When he called them together to pay them, he started with the ones who started last, and he paid them the same amount, including the ones who were first. And when the ones who were first complained, even though they got exactly what the owner said he would pay them, he said the only reason he gave was his own generosity of grace, that he wanted to pay everyone the same. And so it doesn't matter how long we're a Christian or what we've done, we still all get the same reward. Okay, then we looked at the parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector. We saw how the Pharisee made a good start to his prayer. He said, "I thank you, God," but then he thanked God for how good he was, not for what God had done or who God was. And then he continued to tell God how good he was, all the good things he did. Whereas the tax collector, see there, he's standing back in the distance, wouldn't even look up his eyes to heaven and just ask God to have mercy on him, a sinner. And so with that cry, he went home justified and not the proud Pharisee. Then we saw we briefly looked at the three lost parables. So the parable of the lost sheep, and the shepherd went looking left the 99 in the pen, and the shepherd went looking for the lost sheep and found it and rejoiced with his neighbours. Second parable was a lost coin. A lady had lost one coin, and so swept the house and looked everywhere looking for that lost coin, and when she found it, she also rejoiced, celebrated with friends and neighbours. Both of those parables concluded with Jesus saying joy in heaven over one sinner who turns to God. Then he told the third parable of the two brothers and a father. And I mentioned, I got some of the material from, what happened there? Well, we got some, Man, this PowerPoint's really messed up today. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, got part of some ideas as well as my own thoughts and others from the Prodigal God, a book by Timothy Keller, and that was based on a sermon, Sharing the Father's Welcome. So this is actually the fourth sermon on one parable. So it's a record. It is the last one. It is the last one this time. I started off two, and then another one, and then today as well. But today is actually probably the most important one for it. So we saw a younger brother who was, there it is. Okay. A younger brother who was rebellious and wasteful. Wanted his father's possession, but didn't want to be with his father. He demanded an early inheritance, and then he quickly left home and squandered all that he had. The older brother was resentful and ungrateful. He followed all the rules, worked hard, didn't disobey his father, but had no love for the father. He saw himself as simply a slave. And so the elder brother was just as alienated from the father as the younger one who ran away. So how did the father relate to each of these two sons? One wasteful, one ungrateful. To the wasteful son, he saw him a long way off and runs to him, puts on a robe, a ring and sandals, 3 symbols of reconciliation and sonship, full and perfect reconciliation. Everything is done by the father to assure the returning son of full and complete forgiveness. To the ungrateful son, he pleaded with him to go in. And he showed his appreciation for the oldest son. He made the appeals. Dear son, not a slave as the son said he was. He was a dear son. You're always with me. That's what the father desired, that the son was always with him. The relationship was more important than the work. He didn't compliment his work or anything. He says, you've always been with me. You've always been with me. That was more important. Everything is yours. Your status remains secure. But we had to celebrate because your brother who is dead is alive. When the older son calls him your son, the father responds, your brother. For the father, relationships is everything. The lost are not just God's children, but our brothers and sisters as well. And so, prodigal, profuse, wasteful, lavish, give lavishly and foolishly, imprudent, excessive, unstinting, unsparing. So it really should be the prodigal father. He was the one who was all of those things. This is the heart of the Father, extravagant, reckless, overwhelming grace. Not just welcoming sinners who return, but running to meet them. Not just forgiving, but celebrating. Not just restoring, but lavishing love. This is grace and truth that we see. And so that's the sermon series so far, and the sermon on the two brothers and father. Okay. Brother of the pilot. Have you heard this story, Malcolm? Okay, wow, I've got one on Malcolm, a military story he hasn't heard of. Okay, this is the brother of the pilot. This is the Vietnam War. You're more of a World War II buff, aren't you? Yeah, okay, we'll forgive you then. Anyway, in November 1964, Don Dawson was a 24-year-old captain of the Shell Oil, and he was aboard a ship in the Panama Canal when he got news that his brother Dan in the United States Army had been reported missing in Vietnam. Now, his L-19 single-engine spotter, have you heard of that one? L-19 single-engine spotter, a plane. Okay, well, that's what he was in, and he got word that it was shot down. Now, this happened 7 years to the day when their father, a merchant marine, was lost at sea. And so the son, Don, he thought, I'm not going to have two people with unmarked graves. We don't know about them. And so he couldn't accept that. And so he left his family in California and he entered Vietnam to begin an incredible 10-month search for his brother. He had to argue and circumvent the military, the intelligence, embassy officials, but ultimately they sort of unofficially helped him. Yeah, but he wandered through the guerrilla-controlled jungles looking for his brother. He carried leaflets picturing the plane and describing in Vietnamese the reward for news of the missing pilot. He became known as the brother of the pilot. He was known among the Vietnamese by that name, the brother of the pilot. In a Vietnamese village with the Viet Cong all around, he lived and ate with the peasants. He learned some of their language and came to know the countryside and the people of Vietnam, all the while gathering information which he hoped would lead him to his brother. After 10 months, he emerged from the jungle and reported that his reckless, obsessive search for his brother, Daniel, was over. 4 of those 10 months, he was a Viet Cong prisoner, because he was looking for his brother. They told me he was dead, and they gave me the flight vest that he wore, and they told me to go. They said, you can come back after the war is over, and we'll look after his grave till then. So for Don, it was time to go home, back to his wife and 4 children in California. A brother looking for a lost brother. True story. That's the book that he wrote, The Brother of the Pilot. So the question is, as I finished off the parable last week, why didn't anyone go looking for the lost son? Why didn't anyone go looking for the lost son? In the first 2 parables, the lost sheep and the lost coin, someone goes looking for them. But the parable actually finishes with no ending. Did the elder brother see his own mean, ungrateful spirit and go into the banquet? We don't know. Did he come to see that though his brother had done wickedly, he was still his brother? We don't know. We don't know. The parable would continue, but the hearers would determine the ending. The hearers would determine what the ending would be. So who represents who in the story? Okay. Rightio. Who does the father in the story represent? Who does the father? Sorry? Yeah, God the Father. Okay. Who represents, or who's represented by the rebellious younger son? Yeah, all sorts of us, tax collectors and sinners in the immediate context, but yeah, us as well. And who did the older brother represent in the parable, in the immediate audience? You remember? It was the Pharisees and other religious types who looked down on the tax collectors and sinners. Now, where is Jesus in the story? Where is Jesus in the story? Jesus in the other 2 stories, as the shepherd who seeks the sheep, as the woman who seeks the coin. Where is Jesus in this story? Why doesn't he go and seeking and save the lost, if that was his mission? And so Jesus represented in the other 2 parables, but not in this particular one. Let's go to Genesis chapter 4, verses 8 and 9. Genesis chapter 4, verses 8 and 9. Fourth chapter of Genesis, verses 8 and 9. Excuse me. One day, Cain suggested to his brother, let's go out into the fields. And while they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Afterward, the Lord asked Cain, where is your brother? Where is Abel? "I don't know," Cain responded. "Am I my brother's guardian? Or as more well known, am I my brother's keeper?" And so the implication of God's question was exactly that. He was his brother's keeper. He was his brother's keeper. He was the elder brother. He was one who should be knowing where his younger brother was. In the ancient Near East, and which is sort of the culture that Jesus was in, obviously not Cain and Abel, but still Cain was his brother's keeper. In the ancient Near East, the elder brother was the successor to the father. Okay, so the older brother had an important role in the family. As such, he received a double inheritance. But he was also the caretaker and protector of the extended family. So the older brother had quite an important role. He was the protector of the extended family, including widows, orphans, and economically vulnerable relatives. Okay, so quite an important job, and sometimes he would actually represent the father as well. So the listeners of this parable, they would have been shocked, of course, by the father, getting up and running and welcome this reprobate son of his and, restoring him so quickly. But they also would have been shocked by the elder brother as well. The fact that the elder brother did nothing and that he resented his younger brother. And Jesus told this parable to the Pharisees who were represented by the older brother. If you recall, Jesus told the three parables because the Pharisees were looking down on Jesus because he welcomed sinners and ate with them. So this parable is really aimed more at them than the tax collectors and sinners, because they already knew that God loved them through Jesus, spending time with them. In the parable, the older brother refers to his brother as your son to the father. He refuses to acknowledge the younger brother as his brother. And this is likewise what the Pharisees did as well. They did not acknowledge tax collectors and sinners as their brothers. And while it's true that sometimes Jesus had some harsh words for the Pharisees and the religious leaders, he didn't this time. He just gently said to the older brother, "Look, everything I have is yours. Everything I have is yours." But we had to celebrate. However, if they went out and looked for the sinners, if the older brother went out and looked for him, it would have cost him something. It would have cost him to go out and look for his younger brother. He would have had to spend money to go out looking for him. He would have had to go and spend time to go and look for him. He would have had to expend emotional energy to look for his brother. So everything the father had was his, but it would have costed him to go out and to search. But if he had done this, he would have had the joy that the father had when the lost son came home. The Bible has quite a few stories of flawed elder brothers. There's quite a few. There's Cain, who was the violent brother who killed his younger brother. Then there's Esau, who was the careless older brother who despised his birthright and traded it for a meal when he was hungry. Then we had Joseph's older brothers. They were jealous elder brothers who sold their younger brother as a slave. And so here it's a bit of a pattern with this parable of a flawed older brother. And so in this parable with the flawed elder brother, Jesus is inviting us to imagine a true elder brother. And so that's part of this story as well. The sort of the yearning, well, where is the older brother doing what he should be doing? Let's go to Hebrews chapter 2, 11 to 15. Hebrews chapter 2, 11 to 15. Second chapter of Hebrews, verses 11 to 15. So now Jesus and the ones he makes holy have the same Father. That is why Jesus is not ashamed to call them his brothers and sisters. For he said to God, I will proclaim your name to my brothers and sisters. I will praise you among your assembled people. He also said, I will put my trust in him. That is, I and the children God has given me. Because God's children are human beings made of flesh and blood, the Son also became flesh and blood. For only as a human being could he die, and only by dying could he break the power of the devil, who had the power of death. Only in this way could he set free all who have lived their lives as slaves to the fear of dying. Jesus is not ashamed to call us his brothers and sisters. Jesus is the true elder brother. Jesus is the true elder brother, including sort of the missing elder brother in the story of the prodigal son. Because we are flesh and blood, Jesus became flesh and blood as well. And so in that way, he became like us to free us from the power of death. He is the true elder brother. He is the firstborn of the Father. He is the seeking shepherd who goes to find the lost. He is the resurrection and the life who can give life to the dead. He is the heir of the Father's house. Truly, it can be said of Jesus by the Father, everything I have is yours. Everything I have is yours. The Son, Jesus, has everything of the Father. Now, this is not a theological sermon on the Trinity or anything like that, but just the imagery that's being used here is one of Jesus as our elder brother. The parable is incomplete if we forget that the older brother is not necessarily the Pharisees, but Jesus. He does not merely welcome us home as the brother did, but he goes to find us in the pig pen. It's sometimes said in this parable, there's no death, there's no atonement or anything like that. The son just comes home and everything's okay. The Father welcomes him. What's going on? What's going on? Now, this is not a sermon on forgiveness. I've got a whole sermon series on that, which you've seen before. That also was extended for a long few weeks. But one point sort of read in that book by Tim Keller is forgiveness is never free. Forgiveness is never free. It always costs somebody to forgive. Never sort of thought of it that way before. For the receiver, it's free, okay, for sure, okay? But for the person who grants forgiveness, it's almost never free. It's almost never free. If I break something of yours, you can either demand that I pay it, or you can say, don't worry about it, and you'll go and buy it yourself. Okay, so to forgive, it's going to cost you something. If you don't replace it, okay, you've lost what was broken. Or if you do replace it, it has cost you. It has cost you. If you damage my reputation, I can seek revenge by deliberately damaging your reputation as well. Or I can forgive and try to restore my reputation without attacking and vilifying you. So in this case also, the one who forgives pays something. The forgiveness always involves, somebody has to pay. And that was sort of a new thought to me, actually. And so, even in the story of the lost son, the two sons, the father had to pay with a lost reputation to forgive, because to forgive the son without him earning his way back into the family was pretty scandalous. And so it cost Jesus to come down to this earth. He was in heaven. He had the glory of heaven, and he came to this dull earth. In heaven he was adored and worshipped as king. Here on earth he came as a baby born in a manger to poor parents. In heaven he lived in glory and splendour. Here on earth he confessed he had nowhere to lay his head. Finally he died for the sins of the world and to show us God's love for the world. Forgiveness is never free. Forgiveness is never free. Even if it's not somebody dying or an atonement, forgiveness is never free. And so in the case of Jesus, it also was not free as well. Even though for us who receive forgiveness, it is free, absolutely. We can do nothing to earn the forgiveness of God. We just come to him with our sins and repent. So where do you and I fit into this story? Where do you and I fit into this story? We are to be like the true elder brother Jesus and look for the lost. God gives us the assurance that everything he has is ours. Everything that the Father has is ours. Salvation full and free by grace is ours. All the riches heaven has to offer is all ours. Full and free access to God the Father is all ours. God has given us everything. But if we are to be true elder brothers and sisters in the manner of Jesus, it will cost us. It will cost us to do that, to go and to seek and to save and to look for those, to ask them to turn back to God. It'll cost us time. It'll cost us money. It'll cost us emotional energy. It'll cost us to lead other people to God. People can be inconvenient, can't they? They can be very inconvenient. But God asks us to do that. God asks us to be like a true elder brother or elder sister. The Pharisees would not recognize the tax collectors as the brothers and sisters, never alone God's children. Didn't even consider them that. The Bible tells us that our true elder brother Jesus is not ashamed to refer to us as his brothers and sisters. He is the true elder brother. We might not have the same contempt for the loss that the Pharisees had for tax collectors and sinners. However, do we see them as our brothers and sisters? We might see them as God's children, but do we see them as our brothers and sisters? And all the filial feelings that we have for brothers and sisters or people in our own family. As Christians, we might look at the parable superficially and say, yes, I'll welcome sinners who come to God no matter what they have done. But in this parable, it's more than that. It highlights the love of the prodigal father, the father who recklessly lavishes love. In contrast, the mean-spirited elder brother with our true elder brother Jesus. But it also challenges us to be a true elder brother or elder sister to sinners in the world and to seek and to save the lost. And so how will we react? How will we be? Will we be true elder brothers and sisters? This was the invitation that Jesus was leaving. Now, this is one of the only parables where there's no, there's rejoicing in heaven or anything like that. Jesus was simply extending the Pharisees, hey, think about your life. Think about your life. How does this end? Will you have a different attitude to these sinners? You've seen how I treat them. How would you treat them? How will you treat these people who are your brothers and sisters? You are elder brothers. How will you treat them? An interesting story during the week. This is a man whose name is Behen Mutlu, I think. Okay. That's how it's looked like anyway. Behen Mutlu. And he tells about a night in September 2021. Okay, he says, my friend and I had finished some business in town, and we also bought some alcohol on the way back. Afterwards, we drank together, and when it got too late, I said, I'm going to rest. And so I left him. We'd been drinking in a summer house, and I went to another house to rest. After a while, my friend returned to the neighbourhood and met my wife. And she said she hadn't heard from me and couldn't reach me by phone. He's telling about this later. Thinking I was lost in the forest, my wife and friend notified the police and search and rescue teams, who promptly launched a search operation in the forest. They were near a forest where they were drinking. He said, I went to sleep about 1 a.m. and I woke up about 5 a.m. And when I woke up, there was these people outside. And I said, what's going on? They said, there's somebody missing, and so we're searching for them. And so he joined the search party. After about half an hour, the search team, they called out the person's name, and they called out Bayan Mutlu. And he said, then I realised they were looking for me. And he said, I broke out in a cold sweat and told them I was Bayan Mutlu, but they didn't believe me. It was only when they finally, when my friend came, they finally believed him. So there he is in the circle there in his search party for himself. Okay, so he's joining the search party there for what he didn't realise was himself. We are like him. We are like him. God has searched for us, and we have gone back to him. And now he asks us to search and bring others to him as well. And so just like this man here, he was both searched for and also doing the searching. That's the same for us as well. God has found us, and so he invites us to go searching for others. And when we search for others, we're actually also helping to search ourselves and our own relationship with God. So the parable ends. Will we be true elder brothers and sisters for the lost? How will we finish this parable and this sermon series? We'll now have our